Hello, hello. Here's another week of Wanderlust travel stories. So, the last time we were at Bangkok and Martine is going to Chiang Mai. And they say Chiang Mai was the spiritual city of Thailand. So, let's go see what the story goes for her essential year. Hmm. I remember I took the train to Chiang Mai, but I'm not sure. Uh, have we arrived Chiang Mai or have we just boarded on the train? Let's see. Oh, okay, we're halfway there. In the north. I woke up because the light was getting really bright. I looked outside the window and there it was, the jungle. Real green lush jungle. Just few meters from me. Whoa. People were getting up, changing behind the curtains, talking. I didn't see any Thai people here, except for the staff. I couldn't wait to get to Chiang Mai. What awaited me there? The train has arrived. Chiang Mai wasn't a small city, a sprawl of white blocks scattered across a green plain and bordered by mountains. But compared to Bangkok, it looked almost peaceful. There were a lot of tourists, of course, but not nearly as many as in the capital. I didn't really feel like looking for a place to sleep yet. I was so full of energy that I decided to just see the city. But maybe it would be better to look for a hostel? Let's take a walk. The river that greeted me. The city looked friendly. It was green, and everywhere I moved, I could see the shining roofs of temples. There were plenty of charming cafes and restaurants that served every type of cuisine you could imagine. On the other hand, many streets had a Western feel, and most tourist spots had signs in English, Chinese, and Japanese. It was a mix of East and West, but they coexisted peacefully. With every step, my backpack shoved my bare shoulders. I soon found myself in a park on the riverbank. I stopped there for a while and enjoyed the atmosphere. Around me, life went on in a slow, lazy rhythm. Boats sailed on the river, and people were picnicking, strolling, or just lying in the sun. The park wasn't big, but I liked it. As, as, wa- As I was enjoying the view, I saw a little Thai girl playing near the water. This was great. The park was lovely, the girl was cute, and I felt that by leaving Bangkok, I set myself free. I could now experience the real Thailand. The girl must have felt that I was looking at her, or maybe it was an accident, but she lifted her gaze and gave me a beautiful, toothless smile. She picked something up from the ground and ran toward me. I waited for her to reach me. When she did, she stretched her hand toward me, and I saw a tiny green glass pebble on her palm. She took my hand and gave me the pebble. Thank you, I said, and she smiled. Sarak kun, she replied. Or at least it sounded like that. Then she smiled again and ran back to the river as if someone had launched her from a slingshot. I looked at the pebble on my palm. My face was reflected in it, small, distant, and mysterious. I went on my way. I needed to find a place to sleep. After some consideration, I chose a hostel by the river. It was a nice area, full of tourists and a colorful local life. The hostel was calm and clean, with a kitchen for guests and a restaurant. I explored the neighborhood, met some tourists, and relaxed a little. I like to spend lazy mornings in the hostel garden, drinking coffee, eating breakfast, and talking with other tourists. Chiang Mai was good for that kind of thing. The Rose of the North. There was this one day when I woke up just knowing that it would be memorable. I didn't yet know what would happen, but I was sure that something would. And there were several ways it could come to be. Sometimes adventures came from talking to other tourists, sometimes just from wandering around the city. Let's visit the old town. When Martine met John. On this particular day, I didn't want to see anything specific. I left my hostel and decided to go wherever my feet led me. I liked Chiang Mai more with every passing day. It still had the buzz and energy of a big city, but at the same time, it was so close to nature that I could see the mountains from almost everywhere. The city itself was also beautiful. They didn't call it the Rose of the North for nothing. Roaming the streets, I saw an old school green signboard with white writing on it that said, Bookstore. An adventure! I cheered out loud to myself as I rushed inside. The bell over my head rang as I entered the store. After leaving the sunlit street, I didn't see much for a moment as it was much darker in here. The air smelled of dust and the most delightful of smells, at least according to some. Books. There were piles and piles of them everywhere. The room cut sharply by their shadows and rays of sun coming through the window curtains. I was afraid to touch any of them in case I'd die, crushed beneath a literary tower of the world's masterpieces. I look at the books: Hemingway, Hugo, Dostoevsky, Szymborska, Munro, Marquez, and Woolf, Nobel Prize winners, Pulitzer winners, and people who didn't win anything but were equally well known. And for every author name I recognize, there must have been a dozen I didn't. Most of it all, they were in English. Finally, I noticed a desk at the end of the room, wedged between the piles of books. On the desk was an open MacBook, clean, silver, and beautiful. And behind it sat a white man. He hadn't even noticed me and wasn't paying attention to the computer either. He was immersed in a book. I greeted him to get his attention. It took him a moment to register that I was in the shop and look at me. He closed the book carefully, using a bookmark to save his page. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you come in. I was rather consumed by the book, I'm afraid." His English was absolutely perfect, as if he was a reporter for the BBC. Yet, he seemed very different from the man who had taken my photo back in Bangkok. I asked him about the books. Where did he get them? I chose all of them by myself. I searched for them, hunt them if you will, as I want this place to be truly mine, hence the chaos. He gestured to it, the maze of books, beads, and dream catchers, smiling. I mean, of course, I try to find things that will appeal to Western tourists, but I also want what I have to be good. What were the good books for tourists? I asked. The Beach, The Bridge Over the River Kwai, Santaram, and Eat, Pray, Love. He answered. His guess was disturbingly close to the mark. Is this some kind of sixth sense? You look at people and you just know what book would suit them? I asked. On the contrary, my dear Watson, he said, holding his index finger up to highlight a point. It has long been an axiom. Oh my God, how do you read this? It has long been an axiom of mine that the little things are infinitely the most important. Take you, for instance. You are tan, but not as excited as people who have just arrived in Thailand. You are young and wear the souvenirs that you bought here. Also, you entered an English bookstore, and you travel alone. Therefore, I have reasons to believe, he shrugged, giving the impression it was all completely obvious to anyone, that you are an open-minded young woman who can afford a trip to Asia searching for the meaning of life, so... He turned to one of the piles and gracefully took out The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing, He handed it to me. Here's my input. Why not? I took it. Thank you, I said, although it's disappointing that I'm that predictable. I never said you were, he grinned. I was merely showing that it's possible to deduce certain things from a person's appearance and actions. I looked at him, not knowing what to make of it all, when his eyes suddenly met mine. What a chick! I stuck my tongue out at him. He burst out laughing. I sat down on a stack of books near his desk. I idly lived through the book he gave me. Maybe you want to find out something about me you can't deduce so easily, I asked suddenly, surprising even myself. Why would I say something like that? And to a man I'd only known for 5 minutes? I think I was bored with being on my own and desperately needed company. For a minute, he just looked at me thoughtfully. Give me a minute. I need to find a key, he said finally. I can show you Chiang Mai if you want. I did want it. We left his bookstore and I was back on the streets of Chiang Mai, flooded with sunlight. Once again, I couldn't see properly as I was blinded by the sun. I was only able to register the sounds, smells, and heat. I blinked and noticed that with this new intriguing person beside me, Chiang Mai was more alluring than ever. I didn't know that seeing the city with him and the conversation we would have would give me a sense of freedom and openness I rarely experienced. Maybe it was because we could afford to be brave, knowing that we wouldn't see each other again after I left Chiang Mai. We talked the real stuff you usually touch only with your closest friends around 2 or 3 in the morning over yet another drink. But for now, we were out of his bookstore and on the hot Chiang Mai street, surrounded by people talking in many languages, writing in different alphabets, and shadows made of shapes coming together. Was it a date? What do you want to see? He asked quietly. Out of his book kingdom and now among people, he looked almost vulnerable. I think temple's a good idea. It's near his house, bookstore. The real questions. I was not dressed for visiting temples, but before I even had the chance to think about going back to the hostel and changing, John handed me a shawl. A client left it in my bookstore, he explained. I think it will be enough to cover your scandalously uncovered arms and spare a monk a heart attack. I wasn't sure if he wanted to save time or just enjoyed looking at my legs. Tell me, John asked as we left yet another Buddhist temple, one of over 700 that Chiang Mai had to offer. What do you think about Buddhism now that you've been here for a while and seen a temple or two? We went to a bench nearby and stopped for a minute. The warm air was filled with mantras and the chirping of the birds. Statues of Buddha stood, observing the passing of time with serene expression and I looked at them for a long moment. Then I told him how I felt. I was fascinated. This religion had turned out to be deeper and wiser than I ever imagined. Than I'll ever imagine. I didn't necessarily believe in Buddha's enlightenment, but I saw the wisdom in almost every aspect of Buddhism. John listened to me thoughtfully. Don't you think? He started carefully, as if he was afraid of my reaction. That it might be, even though you've been here for some time, just being high on novelty. I knew I was like I knew I was like that for some time before. His voice trailed off, and he looked lost in thought for a moment before continuing. Before I started the bookshop, everything was exciting and fascinating just because it was so unlike the things I already knew. The novelty had worn off long ago. I didn't feel as excited as I did when I got out of the taxi on Khao Road, but I understood more, or so I hoped. Yet, Buddhism still managed, still managed, yet Buddhism still managed to surprise me, awe me, and give me joy. I shared that with him, and he smiled. Then let's look for some more joy, shall we? He asked. We went on to see more of the city. I saw many more temples and other old buildings that day. Every stone heavy with symbolism and spirituality. It was just what I needed. Some spirituality and someone to talk about essential things in life. Handicraft Highway. Imagine a road over 10 kilometers long, full of outlets, shops, and stands selling only handicraft. Green glazed pottery, colorful umbrellas, famous local silverware, lacquerware, sculptures and wood carving, accessories, silk goods, and more. So much more. It wasn't just about buying the goods, but you could also see how they were made. I watched master artists work working on working on silverware, and it was beyond awesome. Hmm, that's weird. 3 days is 1,000 plus. How come 4 days is 2,000 plus? Wow, day 11 already. My days in Chiang Mai. The days went by, but I knew that my experiences in Chiang Mai had only begun. It was my decision if I was going to pursue the one I had started or look for a new one. I could also leave Chiang Mai, go further north, and stay for a few days in Pai Village, a famous place among backpackers. Some elephant prints. Coffee. Shall we talk to a fellow tourist? But I've been here for 11 days. I think it's time to move out. It was time to leave Chiang Mai and go see the mountains. We probably need those. The winding road. I boarded the bus and enjoyed the trip north. After the first dozen or so turns, I started to feel dizzy. But it was just the beginning, as there were 762 of them. The forests on both sides of the road looked like monumental walls. The turns were sharp, and the driver didn't care much about our comfort. Sometimes I feel like I was on a carousel or a roller coaster. We drove through spots of shadow and sun, swinging from one side to another in our seats. It was only a 3-hour trip, but it felt like time had stopped and the road hypnotized me. The beautiful parking lot. The bus slowed down, turned, and then stopped. Seemingly in the middle of nowhere, we were on the side of a mountain, in a gravel parking area. The view on the mountains was breathtaking, and the only human intrusion I saw was a tiny tin hut. What I saw was a tiny tin hut. It was like we've been hurled back in time to a bygone age when nature was still all-powerful, ever-present, and awe-inspiring. For several long minutes, I just stood and admired the view. The evergreen mountains stood before me, deceptively calm as the sun painted them gold. The sky was an amazingly sharp shade of blue. It was beautiful, but I was hungry, and the driver said that we were going to have a dinner break here. Red Fanta, whiskey, and ghost. With only one small window, the room was dark, and I didn't see much at first. But I heard something, a loud burp. The source of the sound was a young Thai woman sitting at a long table with her legs spread wide like a man. In front of her, there were at least 8 empty bottles of red Fanta. She was just putting the next one down. I also saw a bottle of whiskey, half full. I looked for someone to ask about food, but I didn't find anyone. There was a long table where the girl sat, 2 benches, and a door with a curtain. The space smelled of lemongrass, coriander, and pork. On the wall, I saw the king's portrait, a picture of Buddha, and an old photo of a young, feminine-looking guy signed Bert Tong Chai. Except for me, there were only some people from my bust, but no one who could take our orders. The girl was still sitting there, sipping Fanta and looking straight ahead as if she didn't see us. She reached for the whiskey and took a huge gulp. I decided to try and talk to her. I went to her end of the table, She ignored me, so I leaned toward her. It wasn't a good idea. A curtain nearby, until now, still as if the place was abandoned, was roughly swept inside. An older Thai woman charged out from behind it, bombarding me with words, and I wasn't sure if she was angry or scared, but she sure was upset. I backed away from the girl. She's a medium in a trance. You shouldn't approach her, someone said. It was a woman about my age, Asian, but dressed in Western clothes. I couldn't help but notice a Supreme cap, Levi's shorts, and Lacoste t-shirt, and speaking with an English accent. A medium? I asked in disbelief. Yeah, it happens, she said, as if it was a thing as natural as the fact that water was wet. We started talking. Her name was Jo, and she was born in Liverpool to a Thai mother and an English father. Her mother left Thailand to search for a better life, and Jo was coming here from time to time to get better at Thai massage, as she worked as a massage therapist back in Liverpool. I was also interested in massage. In the West, we overestimated words. I wanted to leave that baggage behind and learn more about touch. It's a safe job, Jo shrugged. Most of the time. I nodded, not really interested in the deeper story. As we were talking, I couldn't stop myself from glancing over at the medium. I tried harder to focus on Jo. Come on, I see you're interested. She smiled. I can ask her parents if we can talk to her if you want. Jo talked in a hushed voice to the older woman for a while, then they both came back to me. The woman's name was Sully, and her daughter, the medium, was Song. A few years back, she'd been possessed by a ghost of a young man, Khan. He told her that he would protect her home and tell the future. But the later was only for girls he liked. Also, he obliged her to drink lots of red Fanta and whiskey when he possessed her. It sounded a little silly. Red Fanta was probably symbolizing blood. But come on, we were no longer living in the 19th century. You can ask for your fortune to be told if you want, suggested Jo. But you'll have to pay, as these things aren't fake. It wasn't really my thing. I didn't believe in fortune tellers or horoscopes. I opted out and chatted with Jo some more while I ate my curry. Getting into the bus, I still couldn't get the Fanta girl out of my head. If I were born here, would I have ended up as a tourist attraction too? It was an uncomfortable thought. There was nothing I could do about her now. On the road again. We followed the winding mountain road. We passed a woman selling fruit. A huge chopper passed us at a dangerous speed. Finally, we arrived in Pai. The circus hostel. If there was one place every backpacker I'll meet told me about, it was the circus village of Pai. Actually, even John suggested it, saying that I'll like it, so I knew I'll have to spend at least a few days here. 2000. Oh, wait, 2000. Oh, it's actually cheaper than Chiang Mai. People were right. I really liked that place. The inhabitants were backpackers and circus artists who went there to relax after the shows and teach tourists some tricks. So I met plenty of interesting people. The trailers weren't the cleanest, but I didn't go there for luxuries. Besides, the vista on the mountains, the swimming pool, the parties, and the long talks around the campfire all made up for the occasional bugs or the sticky floor. Day 18. The village in the mountains. Every morning, I did yoga in the village square and then spent time talking with people, hiking in the mountains, and of course, learning some circus tricks. The days went by, but one of them proved to be more eventful. What I saw from above. One day, I took a scooter to get to the Grand Canyon near Pai. It was a great idea. I hadn't driven for a long time, and I never realized how badly I missed the feeling. I was finally controlling where I was going, how fast I went, and which way I took, with every twist and turn of the road. I wondered what lay ahead. After an hour, I parked my vehicle on an improvised parking lot. It was a small gravel square, guarded by an elderly Thai man who took refuge from the sun under a huge umbrella. There was a cardboard sign saying security on the plastic table he sat at. I saw a few other scooters in the parking area, 4 cars and a bus, but no tourists. I parked my scooter, nodded to the security grandpa, and went to see the mountains up close. The road to the top took me an hour, and it was a great time, given the heat. I had my sturdy trekking boots, and they proved to be a blessing more than once. Sometimes, the only thing I could focus on was the path beneath my feet and making the next step, but there were also moments when I just froze, amazed by the beauty that surrounded me. I didn't see many people on the road, and I felt like Indiana Jones or Lara Croft exploring the wilderness on an adventure. The vista from the top was breathtaking. Around me was a verdant sea, the dark green abyss looking back at me. On the horizon, a jungle rippled across the mountain tops. The path along the ridge of the canyon was narrow and bare. No barriers, no handrails, no anything. It was just me and nature. Nobody was going to save me if I went too far, fell, and died. It would be my decision and my fault. Let's go. But I went too far to turn back at the last moment. The path was fairly easy and extraordinarily beautiful. Looking around at the land that was beneath me, I felt like the queen of the world. Pride and awe filled my lungs, making me feel lighter and incredibly relaxed. Above me, there was only sky, and I finally understood what Lennon meant in Imagine. I was one with the world, with nature. It was for moments like this that I went to Asia in the first place. Finally, I had to get down the steep mountainside. At the foot of the hill, I saw a dark, deep crack in the ground. It was big. The whole thing looked like the hill had just split in half. Near the fissure, there were some trees and a sign. Dancing trees. Shake them and see them dance. No, thank you. It didn't interest me. I mean, it was probably nice, but seemed silly. As I stood there, probably not looking very smart, two older Thai people approached me. They pointed at their stall, placed nearby in the shadows, but didn't speak English very well. Land here hour, said the woman. Trees hour. You hungry? I was hungry. And lucky they were there. They set me at a table with a small feast on it. There was a plate with fruit, some nuts, homemade wine, and fresh honey that was probably local and tasted great. It was delicious. We had trouble communicating since they didn't know much English. At one point, the woman gestured toward the fissure and made a move as if she was smoothing something, then showed me 3 fingers and pretend to break something in half. The fissure had been there for 3 years? They must have had this land for longer than that. They looked like farmers, so weren't they worried when their land quite literally broke in half? I showed the fissure and held my face in my hands. The man smiled and gestured toward the crack. He then spread out his arms, indicating everything that surrounded us: the jungle, the mountains, the canyon, then the blue sky. He finished with his hands on his heart. The woman smiled, nodded, and covered his hand with hers. The fissure was beautiful. Yeah, that's what he must have meant. I nodded. It was. All this land was beautiful. We spent the next half an hour communicating in gestures while we ate. They offered me new dainty treats what seemed like every minute. I'd not seen such sincere hospitality in Thailand before. When it was time to go, I asked how much I should pay. As much as you want, they said. whoa, just whoa. It was worth at least 150 bahts, so I left as much. Then I left. Going back, I saw some couples sitting in the mountains and admiring the views. I left them to it. I had my feeling of transcendence earlier, and I wouldn't exchange it for any vista. When I was leaving the parking lot on my scooter, I saw some writing on the fence. Slow down your life, get more happiness, it said. I smiled. It was exactly what I was doing here. And maybe, with luck, it could be what I'll do everywhere after I returned from Asia. I was feeling that maybe I was starting to get a hold of life. The village in the mountains. One of my favorite pastimes was watching people. I realized that after some time that most of them were totally unaware of who they really were. I liked them. I liked most of them. Wow, day 22. I spent more time in the village than usual. The food was amazing and the people so interesting that I completely lost track of time. Let me see. Let's go learn tricks. Oh, what a circus! If I hadn't learned some tricks in the circus hostel, I'll never have forgiven myself. Luckily, there were a lot of people eager to share their skills. I just needed to pick a discipline. Wow, they are. Maybe this one. I wanted to eat fire, and I soon found a teacher. Her name was Jelena, or Yelena. Born in Ukraine, she now traveled the world with different groups and sometimes solo, doing shows for tourists. I found it rather romantic. She was a true expert on my chosen subject. She started very seriously, telling me the safety rules and risk. I could get burned, of course. If I used the wrong kind of fuel, I could poison myself. If I used too little or too much of it, I wouldn't have the right flame on my torch. Afterward, she explained the process to me. I needed to moisten my lips, tongue, and palate with saliva, always hold my head up, and finally, not be afraid to close my mouth around the flame as if I were eating a candle. After a few tries without the fire, she decided that I was ready to try the real thing. I licked my lips to spread the saliva around properly. With a loud whoosh, Yelena lit the torch. I I looked at the sky and cleared my mind. As I took the torch, a sudden whiff of the fuel made me balk. I took a deep breath to calm myself and opened my mouth as wide as I could. I slowly swallowed the torch, feeling the heat growing with every heartbeat. I was putting a burning torch in my mouth. I closed my mouth around the flame. A little too fast, it turned out. Ouch! I threw the torch away, cursing, laughing, and trying to cool down my burnt tongue. Not bad for a first timer. Yelena picked up the torch. At night, the main street of Pai filled with market stalls. I wouldn't have been myself if I hadn't spent long hours looking at clothes. I bought a local dress with a palm pattern and a few beautiful shawls. What do I have? Oh, local attire now. Okay. I think I'll stop for now. Wow, she really stayed at this pie for quite some time. Let's see. She was at Bangkok for I think 3 days. Chiang Mai was 11 days and Pai is 24 days. According to the description, it was a very small village. Though there's a lot of interesting tourists walking around. It'll be fun too. Like maybe meet someone new every day. I would actually enjoy the trekking on the mountains. I enjoy hiking, but I don't really like the heat. So I think the best hikes that I had was in New Zealand and Japan in springtime. So till next week, and we'll see how Martine's journey in Thailand goes. Bye bye.